Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. MashaAllah, we have a new panel. Well, not a panel, it's a two-man show today. On one side of the screen, you'll see myself, and you guys have been watching for since the beginning of Ramadan. And today, somebody new that we have on our podcast, and we welcome by Saeed, who is a very good friend of mine, somebody I've known for a while. Always in and around and supporting masajid and the Muslim community. Bhai Saeed at the moment is also one of the Shura members at MCM, Central Mosque Manchester, and also is an active member of the Sale Muslim Academy, who are really active in Sale. At the moment they have regular Taraweeh taking place. They have monthly and bi-weekly events taking place. And mashallah, Bhai Saeed does a lot of the steering behind that, alhamdulillah. So welcome, Bhai Saeed.
Jazakallah khair for the introduction. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I'll let you introduce yourself as well in a bit more, so people know which background you're coming from.
My background is that by profession I am an accountant.
Okay.
I run my own consultancy.
Mm-hmm.
I reside in Sale in Manchester. I've always been around Manchester. So locally, yes, I'm involved in our Muslim Academy Sale, our little community group that we run, doing a lot of activities for the community. And I'm, as an accountant running my own consultancy, I'm helping people with their taxes, with their accounts, and some business advice, etc.
MashaAllah. And I also am aware you play quite an active role at the Guidance Hub as well, and other organizations that you do help in the back, from the background, let's put it that way.
Okay, where I can help, I'm willing to help out. Yeah, so alhamdulillah, where there is a need and if I am able to help, I'm more than willing to do so.
I mean, that's exactly what we want from our communities, isn't it? Those that have that professional background, that bring that influence into the masjid, into our Muslim community, and support them wherever you can. An example of that is by Saeed here. And the reason why I've called him today is, as you've been watching from day 7 and day 8, we've been discussing zakah and finance. And towards the end of yesterday's session, I did mention that we'll have somebody who specializes in finance to give us some support, some guidance, and especially for young Muslims, knowing where to invest, knowing how to invest. And towards the end of today's discussion, inshallah, I'll be asking Bhai Saeed to give us guideline on little steps Muslims can take today in order to establish their own businesses and become independent. As we know, business is something that the Prophet ﷺ did all his life, something that he prided in, and something that he spoke highly of, describing that 9/10 of wealth Allah has placed in trade, in business, i.e. 90% of wealth lies in trade, and only 10% is in labor, really. And that an honest tradesman on the Day of Judgment will be amongst the Anbiya for his honesty in his trade. And inshallah we'll have those discussion in today's segment. But starting with finance, Saeed, I know you have been following our podcast because you've been giving me feedback. Yesterday's session we mentioned how Islam wants millionaires. There's a demand right now for Muslims to have wealth, for Muslims to financially support their countries, and money means you actually have influence. There comes a point where the business community can sway the direction of governments. Government policy making can be tweaked according to how the business community has its influence. An example of that is like we see in the Jewish community. A lot of the lobbying that they do and how they manipulate from the background. A lot of that is based on money. And Muslims, today there's a need for Muslims to have money. There's a need for Muslims to become those millionaires. And Islam does not condemn becoming millionaires at all. But in our community, how many people do you see with that mindset? How many people, like from your consultancy, and you've had extensive experience?
Okay. In numbers, we are huge. Small businesses, a lot of people do try to get involved in small businesses. Okay. So we drive a lot of the economy on the small business side is done by Muslims. And Muslims are beginning to excel and to become bigger business people, and their businesses are expanding.
Okay.
What we lack is this cohesion in the community, whereby someone who is wealthy, he has the mindset that I need to do something extra to help my community. It's not just about myself.
Jameel.
Yeah, and this is where a lot of the people who we find that who are maybe really wealthy and doing well in their business, and other than the minimum amount that they can do, i.e. pay their zakat and a little bit of sadaqah, they say that's what's needed, and that is the requirement for them to do. But if they were to give a little bit extra, support their local community, you would go a lot further. And if you can develop people with that mindset, and it is a mindset, because it is the case of looking after, I am part of this community, I need to give back to the community, this community who's helped me out, or helped my parents out, helped my grandparents out, I need to give back to them. In the same way, in the fact that if we look at it, a lot of people who are successful business people now, who are in their 40s or 50s, say, for example, if you were to ask them, like when you were 10 years old, your father took you to the masjid, right? Someone taught you how to read Salah. Someone taught you how to read the Quran.
Yep.
Then there was this gulf whereby they disappeared. Okay. And then they only come back at Jummah, on Eid or Ramadan, etc. Okay. So there's that disconnect which has happened. That disconnect, okay, there are reasons for the way the masjid was run. Yeah. Things are improving, without doubt, we can see that. And I think that disconnect will be a lot less in the future, because now we are moving to whereby you're engaging. Even this is a means of engaging with a population who wouldn't normally listen to a sermon.
Friday sermon,
yes. And this gives them the opportunity, because with all due respect, you can't learn your deen by listening to a Jummah khutbah for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Right?
And neither can you learn your entire deen by just being in the masjid in the evening for an hour.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which a lot of parents do end up doing, don't they?
They do.
They drop the child there, and they believe that after 3-4 years, that child is going to walk out of the building as an alim. He's going to know all his do's and don'ts and halals and harams, and he's ready for life. That's not the case.
Absolutely. And so therefore that disconnect that we have is getting, but long as then people who have a means that they can say, look, I want to help out, I need to give back, then you'll find that people will be willing to give back, and you'll find that once things get better, and I think we've seen it in Manchester Central Mosque, for example, there's a lot of people who have, if you look at our shura now, a lot of them were, as children, used to go to the masjid. They have now come back to help out the masjid in different aspects. A lot of professionals are coming back, so things are changing. And so when you have that sort of generations coming in, you'll find that things will improve, and they will want to give back and expand to the masjid and give back to their communities, etc., to develop.
In terms of businesses, how can a successful businessman help in his community from a business money point of view?
Okay, so
in the sense that he supports, not by literally giving money, but taking them on that same ride that he's taken.
Yeah. So one of the things that is very key, and you find it everywhere, is mentorship.
Yes.
Right? Okay. It happens in every field.
Yes.
And even some of the bigger businesses, they take on apprentices and mentors to really develop those people. We need to have the same way, in the fact that someone who's successful needs to take on some people, say, look, I am willing to mentor a few people, to develop them, to become successful and gain the skills that they need. And that's what it is. And this is where they can, help out, because you're giving them an opportunity for employment, you're giving them the experience they need. Once they've got that, that may be the door for them to get other employment and to further their own careers, etc.
That is, I think, is that not where we fall short? The general understanding is that a wealthy businessman is only going to teach his son, maybe his nephew, and he's going to keep that wealth within his bubble, within his circle. He's not going to really want to share it with somebody else, because he may take over.
Okay, so think about the world. It's a big place.
Yes.
Right? And it's getting smaller and smaller. We can
global
communicate now with people from the other side of the world on WhatsApp, which we couldn't do in the past. So no one person has the ability to supply whatever service you give or whatever product you have to the whole world. There's ample opportunity for demand there.
Fair enough.
So, by sharing and sharing alike, you're not really going to lose your own customers. You'll find that actually some competition may be better for you as well, right? As well. So by having because one thing that competition does, if someone has been in business, and they're very steady and happy in their business, and they feel there's no competition here, when a competitor comes, it forces them to think outside the box. And then you develop new products, you start thinking of how I can do new services, and you develop yourself as well at the same time.
New outreach and so many aspects of it. I mean, Quran alludes to that. وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ. Support each other in righteousness, in good. And if this is a healthy competition, as long as it's healthy, then that's good. But the problem is when it becomes negative, where it's been done to cut his legs, where it's done to, so he makes a financial loss, and that I have that business or I take that business.
Unfortunately, that's the reality of the mindset that we have in our community. Sometimes that happens.
I mean, if you compare ourselves to the Jewish community, we'll be mentioning them. They're really an example for us, because they've run successful businesses, and when they have a successful business, they'll get more people on board and expand, because the mindset ultimately is supporting my faith and people of my faith. And what they do really successfully is they keep money within their circles. So they'll have their own plumbers, they'll have their own electricians, they'll have their own builders. Whatever business or any work they need to be done, they keep it within their community, which is something which the Muslims really lack in, don't they?
It's all networking, you see. That's how networks work. You have your own network, you develop your own network, you depend on your network, you pass business between each other's network. Similar sort of way that, yes, if we were to support each other, and if someone's got a service here, I use their service. If we've got a shop here, I'll use the Muslim shop to support each other, the business. That would help them. You're helping yourself as well. So take for the example at this Ramadan, for example, we have dates. Okay, every Muslim has dates in their home. Right now we have a choice. We either buy dates which are going to support a good cause, like we done at Manchester Central Mosque, or we can go buy dates from Asda, Tesco supermarkets, which may be a little cheaper, but we're supporting the mosque, we're supporting a cause behind it. Similar sort of thing. So it's that sort of thing. It's just that mindset. Okay.
I mean, because this comes starting from how we can support our community financially, and one of the point being that we keep the monies within our faith group. It allows the Muslims to become richer. Ultimately, they will support Muslims back home. It will support the Muslim infrastructure. But what we commonly see is there's a stigma that a Westerner or a white man could do a better job than a Muslim. So if I'm going to get a let's say a garage made or an extension or dormer or something, I'd rather go to the Westerner, the white man, because up there it's like, I think it's still those post-colonialism effects that we still have in the community. You're not going to call a Muslim who can do the equivalent job just because he's slightly cheaper. Up there we think he's cheaper, he's probably going to do a bad job.
Okay, I think there's two things here.
Okay.
One is the mindset. I think we need to get out of this colonial mindset.
Yep.
The other thing is that sometimes we've let ourselves down as well.
True.
Because we have cut corners, and if we were to deliver a proper service, people would recommend, people say, yeah, he's good, he or she is good, we'll use their service, their product is good, they do a good job, etc. So we have let ourselves down at times. So that is part of it. But the mindset, I think, is changing over time. I think now there's a lot more professionals and a lot more people. Even if you look at the standards of shops or restaurants, they are fair. If you compare them what they were 10, 15 years ago, there's a big, not just increase in numbers, but in the quality and the ambience of the place and the look of the place, etc.
Yes.
There has been an upgrade. People are fully aware of what's needed and they are developing themselves.
Exactly. An example of that is like in Winslow Road. Through COVID, we've seen so many shops go through that transition where they've not updated themselves. They look more presentable. They look neat and clean. Yeah, rightfully so. In terms of finance, is what we really wanted to discuss today. I've had a few people ask me questions on this subject. So for Muslims particularly, where should they be investing in this climate that we live in? We know we've just come out from COVID. Businesses are still starting to take off now. As a teenager, as a young adult, or just a postgraduate, where should he be investing his money?
Okay, so there's lots of different things. So when we look at investment, if someone who's got surplus funds, for example, and they want to invest some money, okay? Now, if I was to ask you, if an investment, what was the first thing that would come to your mind?
I've actually never thought about it.
If I say, look, you say, let me say you got £10,000, what do you think you would invest in?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is you want to invest somewhere where your money will continue to increase, not decrease. You want to make a profit. And a lot of the time it's insan wants something to be quick. That's the nature of insan. Once investor wants to see the money is coming back very quickly.
Yeah. Okay. So if you take that, you develop that, you've got some money, you want to invest it, and lots of people are asking, where should I invest money? So as Muslims, first of all, you can't invest anywhere and everywhere.
Right.
Okay, so we've got to avoid interest. We've got to avoid certain products, etc. We can't invest in certain industries, etc.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how successful they are, but we just do not go into those industries. We do not invest in those industries. So where can we invest? So in our community, property seems to be very high up on the list of where, this is a great investment property. The problem is that how do you finance a property? Okay, that's obviously going to be a question that somewhere along the line someone's going to ask, how do you finance a property? Now, the easiest, cheapest way to finance a property is if you can afford to buy a property cash. But not many of us have that sort of funds available to finance a property cash outright. But what can happen, and what is happening, there have been some Muslims who have got together and they've opened this up to Muslims, and some non-Muslims are investing in this. Is they're saying, okay, you've got £1,000, he's got £1,000, she's got £1,000. Can we pool that resources together and buy a property? And then we'll sell the property, and the share will then, the profit of that will be distributed to the people who done this. That sort of investment is halal.
That's halal, and it's easy.
It's halal, it's straightforward.
And
look, I'm going to mention a few places during this conversation about, but let's make it clear that we don't get any commission. We're not on any paid feed, but these are tried and trusted mechanisms for us to look into for investing. So for property, there's something called Yielders, YIELDERS.co.uk. And that's what they do. They actually, the scenario that I've just pointed out to you, that is what they do for investment.
So you're basically, your input is that you put your investment down?
Yeah, so on this scenario, they will say, they'll give you exactly, you select, they'll have 3 or 4 properties they're going for at the present time. And they will say that, look, this is the cost of buying it. We anticipate that the renovation cost will be X amount. After it's renovated, we'll be able to sell it for this amount. Therefore, we anticipate it will produce a yield of X amount. Right? And this is the time scale that's involved in this. And you pick and select what you want to do. Okay. So it's fairly straightforward, simple, no problem at all. And a lot of people feel that that's quite good because I'm buying in a specific property. I've got a share in the property. I've got a piece of paper to show that I do own a share. So that's one way they can invest.
So that's yielders.com you said, yeah?
Yielders.co.uk. Okay. Right. So we'll send the links out later, but absolutely.
We can add them to the description on the YouTube link, inshallah.
Absolutely.
Beautiful.
So that's for property. Okay. So there's a lot of other people who would say, look, what I've got is small investment, and maybe I want to do something like an ISA or something. Right. So now, how do you do an ISA which is halal? right? Because obviously ISA is in stocks and shares. You can't invest in every stock and shares. And if you went to a normal bank and you had stocks and shares, you might be investing in some haram.
We touched on that yesterday in a bit of detail.
Yeah, about you did the calculations, what percentage, etc.
Yeah, that's in terms of zakat calculation. Yeah, but just highlighting again one more time, if you've not seen that not every stock or every share that you invest in is halal. You have to be aware. In fact, one of the questions asked later on was pensions. So when people are depositing to pensions, maybe that's probably one of the things in your mind. People they see that as an investment, but you must be sure where your pension pot is being spent.
Yeah.
And if it's somewhere like in alcohol, in pork, the adult industry, or anything like that, it's completely haram.
Absolutely. I'll talk about pensions and how you can get around pensions things later on. So let's talk about stocks and shares.
Go on, bismillah.
So with an ISA is, for those who don't know, ISA is something that you invest in. The return that you get from an ISA is tax-free. That's the benefit of it. Okay, so you invest the money in there and the return that you get is tax-free. So that's the incentive.
Okay.
So now how do you get something to make a halal ISA? So there's a company called Wahid Invest.
Wahid Invest.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll send it out, the link out again.
The link will be available, yeah.
Okay. So that's what they do. It's an online platform. They've got an office here in London as well. They've moved from America. Well, they've opened an office here. They're expanding. But they give you the option if you want to invest in an ISA which is Islamically Sharia compatible. And they make sure that that's what is done. This is what we feel that it will yield. Because obviously it can go up or down, but this is what they anticipate it will yield. This is the growth that will be involved. That's available at the.
Doesn't that take quite a while before it starts to actually give you a yield? Because Wahid, I think it's that not. There's an application I came across, and a friend was advising me on this one as well. But it could take up to 10 years before it actually starts to really kick in. It's like that grade really takes quite a while.
Okay, so with an ISA, you get a percentage of what you invest.
Okay.
Okay, there is an amount that you can invest every year, or monthly or whatever. Obviously, the return is small; it's only like a few percentage.
Okay.
But you get a return if everything goes well. Okay.
Yeah,
so I have to add that proviso. If everything goes well, you get a small return. Obviously, the more money you have invested, the greater the return.
The more the return, yeah.
Yeah. So that's how it works, really.
Fine.
Okay. So, but that's an option. That's an option that people have.
Okay.
So that's why I'd invest. Talk about pensions. Now, pensions is a difficult one. Okay. So you've got to be very, very careful about where your pension is invested. Some people would take this side that, look, forget the pension, have your money, invest it yourself, do whatever you want with it.
That's advice I was asking.
Right. Okay.
When I looked into it,
I think you mentioned that in the day before. I think you did.
Forget about it. You'd rather just invest it somewhere privately, get those returns, peace of mind.
Absolutely.
Really.
Okay, so there is a solution to this though. There is a friend of mine who's based here in Leicester.
Okay.
Who actually deals with pensions, and I'll bring that link up now. Okay, he's and I wanted him to be here today, but he just said, look, I just can't make it to Manchester at this time. Okay, but next time, inshallah, we will do this. Simply Ethical. Simplyethical.com is his business.
Okay.
Okay, the brother's name is Faisal Kabani. He's based here in Leicester.
Okay.
And he has solutions about investment. And one of the things that he has got is a pension which is Sharia compliant.
Okay.
Right. And there may
a bit more detail than how if you have any more detail on that, how has he pulled that off?
So how has he pulled that off?
Yeah, go on.
He's an accountant like myself. Okay, that was his background, but he moved into the Islamic finance field a long time ago.
All right.
And he then started looking at what's available, what's not, and he started developing products, etc., working with people to develop some for the Muslim communities. So he's done quite well in this. And one of the products, because as an employer, you need to have a pension which you need to now give to employees. Okay, so and if you're a conscious Muslim employer, you don't really want to be asking your employees, oh, here's a pension, but is it halal, haram, etc. So he said there's got to be a solution to this.
Okay.
So yes, he's managed to get hold of a pension company. So he went to them. He said, this is what we need.
And he's been able to tailor a pot, especially for Muslims.
Absolutely, specifically for Muslims.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so that's how he's done that.
Okay.
So he has one or two other options for people who want to invest in other products as well.
Okay.
But absolutely Simply Ethical is his sort of consultancy where he deals with this. And
so somebody working for the NHS, for example, can put down, I want my pensions to be going in that pot. Absolutely. Simply Ethical.
Yeah.
And
they will to the point. That's the name of the company, but he will he'll arrange it for it to do whatever it is. But yeah, absolutely, it does exist.
Subhanallah.
Yeah. So Islamic finance is developing rapidly, and there's
a lot of youngsters doing degrees on this now. In fact, a lot of these in Islamic institutes, higher education institutes, a very trending degree or a master's is on Islamic finance, and I believe there's a demand from banks as well right now.
Even the government on Monday announced that they're going to have a special steering group for Islamic finance.
All right.
That was an announcement on just Monday at one of the government iftars.
Okay.
They said we've now decided to have a steering group on Islamic finance. They had one before, but now we want to look into this.
Okay, so that'll be launched again one more time.
It is, absolutely.
Okay.
So that's another option that people have. Okay. So we mentioned this. If you've got excess money still and you want to invest some bigger, and you want to invest in something which will give you a greater return, but the risk is a bit higher, then there is something called ethis.co.
Okay.
They're based out in Malaysia.
Okay.
Right, but they take investments from everywhere else. They do investments in infrastructure.
Okay.
Right? So it's huge investments. We talk about billions.
Okay.
But the return is also great.
Money makes
money. They have a track record.
Okay.
Of running everything, infrastructure running on Islamic finance principles. They've been going for a number of years. They've been doing well in Malaysia and Indonesia. They want a minimum of about £1,500, sometimes £10,000 investment, but the returns that you get are substantially higher.
And what's the time length on these? So when you're investing in, so for example, this one you mentioned, ethis.co.
Ethis.co.
Okay.
Yeah, ethis.co, right?
Okay.
That's what it's called, ethis.co, right? There's different projects.
Okay.
And there's different projects, and they put on there the duration of this project, because these are infrastructure projects, so they are going to be lengthy. They are going to be 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, but it's very clear. But the rewards are there, and they've got a great track record.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the sort of thing that's available to people.
What's coming to mind when I asked around a while back, gold.
Gold, yes.
How can you invest in gold? Because obviously, gold is the most stable asset, and its values is always going to remain there. And whether you go, and I remember reading a report somewhere that the amount of gold that it cost to buy a sheep 1400 years ago is exactly the same today in value. Yeah, it's the most stable form of finance, and if somebody wants, and a lot of people have made a lot of money in gold, and what's the route there?
Okay, so gold is one of those steady investments that people always have, especially when you have turmoil in the political markets. A lot of people then say, look, safe investment, gold. It always has been. When you invest in gold, there's two things that you've got to bear in mind. It's got to be on the spot, i.e. you've got to actually buy gold as of today's price. Right, okay? There are some people, like the reason why you can buy gold which is unallocated.
Oh, wow.
Right, okay.
Is that even Sharia compliant?
That's not Sharia compliant. It's wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah, because that's why I said you have to buy
it. Where there's an ambiguity, there can't be a contract.
Yeah, so there are people selling gold unallocated, i.e. you give them the money and somewhere in the pot they've got some money gold.
They've got it there for you.
Yeah. So it's got to be something that you've got to buy gold, possess. Right, okay. So now if you're buying gold for investment, you don't really want to be buying jewelry. Okay. Right. That's not the best investment. You can buy little bricks, little briquettes of gold, which have been stamped. So you have your authenticity that someone has authenticated that this is solid gold, is valued of this. And they come in 5 grams, 10 grams, 2 grams, 1 tola, etc. That sort of thing. That's the sort of, if you want to invest in, that's what you want to have. But if you buy gold also, one of the things you've also got to then have is a safety deposit box somewhere.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the thing. But
So
gold
that's like
is,
the added cost, isn't it, in terms of storage and keeping it safe?
but absolutely, yes. But it's a safe investment. If you want to pass it on, you want to liquidate, quickly capitalize it, it needs to be transferred anywhere. It's a very, very simple process. Gold is now especially on the demand, especially with this current banking crisis that you have in America, because there's been a number of banks which have collapsed. Swiss bank was in trouble. Deutsche Bank is in trouble right at the moment. Even though in the UK they are saying our banks are capitalized, they are safe, but there is a ripple effect happening, and when those ripple effects happen, gold becomes something very much sought after.
Everybody can turn back to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jamil. Anything
Okay.
else in terms of investment where Muslims, young men, can invest today?
I think I've done most of the things that I thought of, that I've used or I've seen used, and they're the sort of things that I tried and trusted.
Something easy which a lot of teenagers are getting onto is crypto and forex exchange.
Okay.
What's your advice for teenagers getting onto that and they're hooked on this?
Foreign exchange, please ignore. 100%, right?
That's clear.
Do not get involved.
Every
in foreign
viewer
exchange.
listening, do not get involved.
Honestly, my and this is opinion across the board. Talking to all my crowd, they said that look, it's not there. All you're doing is really betting.
Yes.
Right? That's the whole concept behind it. You're betting, is it going to go up or is it going to go down? Right? So
that's as good as playing lottery, isn't it?
It is. You're gambling, and therefore you're betting against this. That's not acceptable.
And it's no justification for it at all.
Then it becomes, now we come to cryptocurrency.
Crypto, okay.
Okay, now cryptocurrency is something that's on the increase, and there's lots of different coins, from Bitcoin to Binance coin to Euphoria coin, etc., etc. There's lots and lots of different coins out there. Now, at this moment in time, it's not really on an exchange. Okay, so therefore, there is ambiguity a little bit. So some of the scholars that I've spoke to, they've said, yeah, absolutely, we accept it becoming more and more common. It's becoming a form of payment as well. So therefore, there's no harm in it, and therefore you would pay zakat on it the same way that you hold any other asset.
Any other asset, yeah.
Yeah. There are some people who say, look, it's still very young in its age, and it needs to be a bit more formalized. It needs to be on some sort of exchange properly done, where there's a proper mechanism to buy and sell. And we can see what the value is and where it is, etc. Then we'll be able to give that. That's where you are with crypto.
With crypto, I mean, from an Islamic point of view, the scholars that I've studied with and who I've sat with are still of the opinion that it's not jais at all. To even use that for exchange or to buy and sell, it's not jais because they still principally differ with where the value comes from.
It's that intrinsic value that you
Where
have.
is that value?
Where is that value? Because you see that it's not backed by gold or silver or whatever. You have this blockchain technology, but what's that backed by?
Where is it? Where is it backed by?
Yeah.
I mean, like you had, recently, I think a few months ago, one of the fellas who was trading this lost about 500 billion something overnight. Loss of a chip, lost everything. The whole, Bitcoin fell apart, and there was so much going on. It's not stable at all.
It isn't. No, it isn't. And it's for that reason. Some people have made money, some people haven't. But again, it's something that if you can avoid, it's better to avoid, because the thing is that there will be a few people who will make money. A lot of people will lose.
Majority are going to lose.
Yeah. That's what will happen.
The ulama, one fatwa I came across, and it stood quite well, was that not until your country accepts it as a means of transaction, and it normalizes alongside the mainstream currency, until then it's not jais for you. So if you live in a country that has normalized it and has accepted it as a currency for its country, you being in that country is jais for you. But otherwise, so for example, we're sat here in the UK right now. The UK, majority of the West still has not accepted it. Therefore, for a Muslim, especially we mentioned this in the other evenings, anywhere that there's ambiguity and you're not certain, the Sahaba Kiram will leave halal out of precaution that there may be uncertainty. So that's the method that we've been taught. That's the amal of our salaf and the companions that have done so. And we should be following that same method for only that peace of mind, isn't it?
It is. You see that what you've got to have. See, when we talk about Islamic finance,
Yes.
we're looking at it's very ethical. It's very clear. There isn't that ambiguity. There isn't that uncertainty.
Transparency
Yes.
is one of the main things that is taught in Kitab al-Buyut when we talk about transactions in Islam. I've talked the transactions as the entire chapter. The one thing that keeps coming up again and again and again, it's transparency.
Absolutely.
And wherever there's been a lack of transparency, you'll notice that type of contract is void altogether.
Well, well, that's your answer for cryptocurrency, because there's so much secrecy behind it, etc. That there's ambiguity there, and that's why.
And an overwhelming number of scholars today are still saying that it's not jais. There's only a minority at the moment.
Yeah, there's only a minority, and it's because it's becoming more and more common, and there is government looking into developing a crypto exchange, which I think the Americans are looking into to having a crypto dollar, and where in the UK is also looking into some sort of crypto pound equivalent.
It's
right?
it's called Britcoin, by the name Britcoin, something like that. Yeah.
Yes. So once that comes about,
then I think the numbers will change.
Then that becomes an exchange, you see, and that's what they're looking into. They're saying, well, it's going that way.
Until then, it's really a no-go zone for us as Muslims.
Absolutely.
And all of this discussion we've just had in this half an hour is in context of what we mentioned yesterday, that every penny must be halal. We've been sharing those small shorts as well, and making sure that every source of income where monies are coming in, you have to be 110% sure that it's halal, it's transparent, it's jais, it's ethical, like you had mentioned.
Okay, I think you've hit on an important part, because we're talking about investment.
Yeah.
But you've also got to look at the source of that income.
Yeah, of course.
Right, and that may be another podcast in itself.
Another
as to
what
what is halal?
Okay.
What professions people should invest in, etc. What should they be? Because even as professionals, there are some industries that we shouldn't be involved in.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and therefore, even if I'm making money from that industry, that doesn't, just because they're not invested in some halal means doesn't make it halal.
Yeah.
Right. So there are certain industries which, like especially with finance, the background I come from, there is some backgrounds which, some specialisms which I would say, look, you've got to avoid as Muslims, and there has to be a bit of an education there, because there are some Muslims unfortunately involved in those sectors.
I don't want to open a can of worms.
No, we won't talk about it today. Yeah.
I want to. I've got so many questions. Car purchases.
Okay.
It's a question that's come through.
Yeah.
Advice for Muslims in terms of purchasing a car. Which is the safest way for them? Because at the moment we have leasing, we have financing, PCPs, all these different ways. What would be the best option for a Muslim where he can save money, but at the same time get that car that he really wants as well?
Okay. The cheapest way to buy a car is to buy it outright.
Cash.
Okay. That is by far the cheapest option.
The best option.
Right. Okay. So, and there's no problem with that.
Okay.
The issue is that not many people have 100,000 to buy a Tesla. Right. Okay. Cash out. So that's where the issue. That's why you have to look at the alternatives if you want that sort of car, or any other car that you have. But it's the thing. But by far, if you can buy a car, if you can afford a car outright cheap, buy it outright, that is the cheapest option.
Okay. That's priority number one.
That's priority number one.
Okay. Number two.
Number two is now, if you're looking into other car financing options,
okay,
you've got to make sure, look, this interest element in some of these higher purchases or other things.
Yes.
They've got to not be there. There's got to be 0% interest free. If you can find something which gives you that 0% finance, then, and there are options to have that 0% finance. It's not a case that it doesn't exist. It does exist.
It's just, yes.
Yeah. That's halal then, because you're not paying any interest. You're avoiding that interest.
I had a question recently, just before Ramadan. Imam Sahib, the company that I'm buying the car from, it's removed that clause which is the APR, and said we'll include that into the value of the car. Is that jais or not? It's jais.
It's jais because the thing
Perfectly
is that's a mudaraba contract.
Yes.
I.e., all they're doing is that they're telling you right at the front,
This is what
the
you'll be
cost,
paying.
this is what the profit is, you're going to pay this amount.
Yes.
And you're paying that amount that you've agreed
On
with
paper, as long as it's not APR that you
Yeah.
are contracting to, and you know that they've put that into the sale value, it's perfectly
Absolutely
jais. It's
perfect,
halal.
because you're paying a fixed amount that
Yes.
you've agreed on to pay them. That's absolutely perfectly right. And if you have that option, that's absolutely fine.
That's an option out
Yeah.
there. Yes.
Leasing,
Ji.
okay. So leasing is the Islamic ijara, okay.
Ji.
So leasing it's not something new. It does exist in Islamic finance.
Of course.
If you can have your lease agreement which complies with the rules and it makes it Sharia compliant, then there's no problem with leasing either, because look, ijara does exist, and if you study Islamic finance, you'll study this concept of ijara, which is effectively leasing.
Renting, isn't it?
Yes,
It's jais.
absolutely.
But it has to be Sharia compliant.
It has to be
Of
Sharia
course,
compliant.
Of course.
So that's your options with the cars. Okay. And interestingly enough, with the cars, there's a growing number
Yes.
of Muslims of conscious Muslims who want to buy a car, who can afford a car, and these finance companies are now producing products for the Muslim market as well. And there's an increase in that because they know there's a demand of these professionals who want cars, but they're not willing to get involved in this. They understand it. So they say, can we now provide a solution? And you find there's more and more people offering those sort of things. Yeah, we've got something for you.
I know quite a few taxi drivers. Obviously, they're driving all day, but they want to drive comfortably.
Yes.
So they've actually reached out to these companies where they've been able to tailor a contract which is Sharia compliant.
Yeah,
but you have to make the effort, don't you?
You have to make the effort. And this is all down to Islamic finance. And and I think we're going to talk about, when someone talks about and there's a need, there's a demand.
Yes.
Then people have produced a solution. The one area where I think we're lacking in, is home finance. Okay, and that's because we haven't made the effort. If we make the effort in the same way that we've done with cars, and I know with cars it's smaller value, so it's probably easier people to understand, etc. And there's people willing to do it because it's a shorter time frame, etc. So they're willing to do that. But there is a similar situation, similar solutions available for homes, which in other parts of the world they have developed in the Western world.
And it's working, yeah?
In America, there's a number of companies which are working, which have worked well to have home finance products.
For Muslims?
For Muslims.
So how does it work? So for our viewer who's never heard of this before.
Okay, so it's really based on a partnership. So it's based on a musharaka basis.
Okay.
And the terminology will be diminishing musharaka, i.e. you have two partners, a home finance company and you, the owner. You would buy the property jointly and they would let you buy, you're paying a bit of rent because you own,
you're using that property,
you're using that property.
It's in your use.
So you're paying a rent.
Okay.
Okay. You're also buying back parts of the property.
Okay.
So over time, the property becomes yours. As you buy more, your rent goes down. The original seed funding for that comes from the community.
From the Muslim community?
From the Muslim community.
Okay.
Okay. So they invest together and they say, okay, so this is, now we've got this house. The profit will be shared with the people who invested into this property. And so this is how they've done. There's a number of companies in America and Canada who have done this very successfully. It needs a lot of seed funding, I accept, because house pricing is expensive. Each house is 300, 400,000.
Yeah.
You need, multiple millions to have the seed funding to finance it. But there's a solution out there, and I think it comes from demand, because once we have that demand and people saying this is what we want to do, we can create solutions.
It's really a Muslim community to come together, isn't it? I mean, that cohesion word that you used.
Where you started from right at the beginning as to how can people help the community out.
And this is one of the things that we need to be supporting.
It all comes from that mindset of coming together and helping the community out. At the same time, you're bettering yourself, and you are also helping the community out as well. So it's a win-win situation. Now, there are some people who will not do anything that we've talked about today.
Okay.
Okay? They will have ample money in the bank.
But they're not doing anything with it.
They're not doing anything with it, and they say, look, I'm not interested in investing. It's too difficult to invest.
Okay.
For those people, I'm going to say to them, look, you know what you should do? Have a look at helping a Qarz-e Hasana project.
Subhanallah.
Because you're not using the money. Okay? You may not need the money. Someone in your community may need that money.
Yes.
Right? Whatever they do, and you can have it written down.
They'll
give it you back. Whatever you borrow them is exactly the same amount you get back.
Okay.
So you're not going to make any gain on it. So no investment on it.
But at least
your
you help
benefit
someone.
is a Qarz-e Hasana, which your benefit is a good loan.
Yeah,
You have
yeah,
benefiting someone else out. You're making use of that money if you're not going to do anything else. Because there are some people who really honestly do not invest. They say, look,
they basically just sat on that money.
Sat on that money. And so, you know, that money could be used for much better purpose. If you don't need it and you think I'm not going to need it for 1 year, have a look at some Qarz-e Hasana project.
I mean, there are many masjids, organizations up and down, even within Manchester. I know Guidance Hub is doing some refurbishment works.
Yes.
MCM is going to be starting a project. We at here at Jamia Rasulia, inshallah, straight after Ramadan, will be working on completing our renovation. So these are all things, and Allah says in the Quran, in the second juz, we recited this on the second night. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. من ذا الذي يقرض الله قرضا حسنا فيضاعفه له أضعافا كثيرة. One who gives qard hasan for the cause of Allah, Allah will give that to you 7 times, 10 times fold over back to you. And then he says, Wallahu yudha'ifu liman yasha. And whoever he wants, he can multiply that even more than that. And that barakah you get by giving qard hasan to either a masjid, to an individual, you're supporting them, helping them. Allah, in fact, a hadith comes to mind. The Prophet ﷺ said that, let's suppose I've lent you money, qard hasan. For as long as that money remains with you, malaika in the heavens make istighfar for me.
Subhanallah.
That's you giving qard hasan. You just sat on the money, isn't it? It's not
Absolutely.
benefiting you. Give it to the masjid, let them finish their project, and for all that duration, all the malaika in the heaven are making istighfar for you.
And you get your money back at the end of the duration.
You get it back as well.
Yes.
So I mean, that's real investment, isn't it?
That's an investment.
That's where you should invest.
That's an investment for the hereafter as well.
For this dunya and in the hereafter. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
But there are some people, you know, who are sitting on those sorts of money, and that's what they should do. They should say, look, I can help people out. Now, the other thing is that I think generally, as a community, we need to develop as more businesses. Not smaller businesses, but those smaller businesses need to move into larger businesses.
Okay.
We have a tendency whereby one business is owned by one person, run by one person. In order for it to expand, it needs people. Manpower. You need to bring the skills in.
Expertise, the right people doing the right things.
That's where I think our community really needs to look into, because there's lots of people who do small businesses, and we're quite good at doing small businesses, but it's taking that next step. How do we make that business into a local geographical business, or then an international business, etc. This is where really successful communities have done well. They've expanded, grown bigger, and as you've grown bigger, they've managed to bring in the expertise and etc. And you're giving other opportunities to other people to do. We need to develop that sort of mindset, and that's something that I sort of, you know, like try to do in some of the trainings that I do, is trying to give people the how do you set up a business, and then moving on to developing themselves, how to make that next step. That you've got a business which is running fine. How do I now need to move it to the next level? Yeah, how do I make this into a franchise, for example? Right, or something else. That's the sort of thing that I think we need to expand on, because that would help the community immensely by seeing successful businesses which have got a name for themselves. And alhamdulillah, there are, you know, in front of us that we've seen some restaurants, etc., doing that sort of well. They've done that. There's been chains of other businesses which have now slowly started doing this. We're behind other communities, but we are moving in that direction, and I think that would help the community, because then once the business gets bigger, all of a sudden, look, you've got to think of I'm increasing employment, right? So some people who need jobs, you're creating jobs for them.
So many more opportunities.
Yeah, you're creating training for a lot of people, right? So it all develops the whole community.
Yeah, rightfully said.
Absolutely.
And so you touched on expanding on a business. Any basic tips you can give to somebody who's looking to establish a business? What are the basic do's and don'ts? How much money do you actually need to start a business? In terms of registration, what should they be doing in terms of taxation? Just a quick guide for our viewers.
Okay. Starting a business is actually become a lot easier now than ever before.
In this country?
In this country.
Okay.
It really has. Technology has moved on so much. You could have a business, you could be doing another job, etc. You could have a side business, etc. It's becoming, and so there's a lot of interest in people developing a second business, second source of income.
Okay.
So that does happen. How do you go about doing it? It needs a bit of research. Okay. The research that you really need to do is you need to find out, is there a demand for your product?
Okay.
You need to find out who buys your product, right? Where are those people at, and how are you going to market those products?
And a lot of this information you can find online now.
You can find it online. Okay. And you need to do some research, because it really is. Now, crazily enough, research is the amounts of information available.
And the access to knowledge you have now
is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll give you a scenario. Recently, someone started off an after-school tuition center.
All right.
Okay. And it was a franchise. Okay. So they were buying a franchise for that local area.
Okay.
And it was one of those after-school children come.
Supplementary school.
Children come after school tuition.
Yeah.
Okay. So as part of the process of applying for this franchise, you need to know the average house price in that vicinity. What's the average grades of the schools in that vicinity?
Okay.
What's the average disposable income of an average family in that vicinity, in that area?
Okay.
Where do you get that information from? Right? Central Library, ask the question. 10 minutes later, literally 10 minutes later, she goes, here you go, sir. There's the information.
Okay.
Right? That's what it was. It was telling me the average house price is this much. The grades of this school is this much.
And the average wages.
This is what the average of people who will live here. This is what they earn.
Okay.
Because that's the sort of information you need, like to work out, is it viable?
Okay.
Is that people are going to have disposable income to pay for their tuition, etc. It was all there, right? Wow. 10 minutes, the job. There was another person, who had a product. I won't mention the product, but it was for ladies.
Okay.
Of a certain age group, over 40s, and she wanted to know whether her product was going to sell or not, right? And she really needed to have this information. And she stood outside Piccadilly railway station, and any lady who was that sort of age, she said, "Can I ask you?"
Okay.
And 90% of people were willing to give her the 2 minutes that she needed to say yes, these are the right colors, etc. Right? She got the information, so it was all the case of demand.
Okay.
Right? To make sure, look, there's a need for that product.
Okay.
Because sometimes there isn't a need for the product. You also have to look at, your vicinity, see what everyone has competition.
Okay.
So you got to look at your competition. What can you do that's different? Why should people come to you for that product? Why were they going to buy from you? So you need to find something unique. Now you can't compete on price. Okay? Because if you compete on price, someone will come on and undercut you, and you'll lose all your customers.
Okay.
So there's no point in competing on price. What you really ideally need to do is compete on service. And you say, look, I'll give a better quality service, have an average price. So I'll give you a real life example of this.
All right.
2 students finished university, and they were very good at doing websites. And they set up a business selling websites.
Okay.
And he said, look, I'm doing it from my home. I don't have an office. And, so we could keep our costs down. And we will charge £99 for a website.
All right.
And they went out and told everyone £99, they advertised it everywhere. After 6 months, how many sales do you think they had?
Not many.
Not many, right? Zero. Okay.
Zero. Okay.
Okay. So why did you say not many?
Because everyone's out there doing this.
Okay. So the reason why, right? So
It's so easily. You could go online and I need a website, and you'll find a few links, and they'll hook you onto somewhere.
Okay. So these guys were really good at what they do. Okay. So
Okay.
they could do a website which would have been a lot more expensive. So then I sat down with them. I said, look, okay, how much would anyone else charge for this website?
Okay.
And they said somewhere like £499.
Oh.
I said, 499, and you're doing it for 99. I said, okay, let's sell it for 499. And they thought I was crazy. They said, look, no one's buying it for 99 pounds, and you want to sell it for 499.
All right.
I said, let's try it. You got what's the harm? 499. All of a sudden, they started getting sales.
Wow.
Because they were doing it on price, everyone thought the price was so cheap it would be terrible.
Okay.
And when a lot of people start up a business, they have this concept that price is too much. Yeah, it's too much. People won't pay for that. People won't pay for that price, right? People won't pay for that. But it's very difficult to increase your price. Now, let me give you a scenario. I want you to think about this, about pricing.
Okay.
If I was to, in this room, there's a number of people, right? If you were to look at your telephone, right? How many people here have got Apple phone? How many people got Samsung? That's 99% of us.
Okay.
There are other cheaper alternatives out there.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're not as price sensitive as we think we are. Yeah.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
People will pay a price for it.
Yes.
Yeah. You're paying
Because
a higher price for an Apple or an iPhone or a Samsung, and there are other products which are equally as good, but because we are so hooked onto Apple and Samsung, we will pay a premium price for it. Okay, so we are not price sensitive.
Okay.
So a lot of people think about price. Now, pricing is and you've got to have a product which you can make a profit on. So for example, milk. Okay.
All right.
Right. Do you think it's a good product to sell as a business? Everyone needs to buy milk. Do you think it's a good product?
Yeah, sounds good.
Sounds good. Right. Okay. Let me take do you think it's a good product? I got a nod here.
I've got a
good product to sell?
The margin's low, maybe.
Margins low, maybe. Okay, he's saying margins low, maybe.
Okay.
Right? Okay. So supermarket sells milk. What sort of profit do you think they make on milk?
I think he's alluded to it. Maybe not much.
They actually lose money on milk.
Okay.
Right? So if you're trying to sell milk, you got no chance.
All right.
Okay? Because they're losing money. They're selling milk cheaper than it actually costs them, which is why the farmers are always crying about milk prices, because they want it cheap as possible. The supermarket saying, we want to sell it at this price. They're actually losing money on milk. The reason why they're losing money on milk is that they know that you need to buy milk. But when you buy that milk, you're going to buy 5 other items.
Yeah.
And they don't want you to go for your milk somewhere else.
So I'll stay here.
Yeah, they want you to come here, and they know when you buy that milk, you're going to buy those 5 other items, which is where we're going to make our money from. So you need to have a product which is profitable. Okay. And something that someone is not dominant in the market, that someone who's doesn't like you, they're going to say, well, we'll knock you out, we'll buy you out, or you can't compete with them. So you need to have those sort of research. The other thing is you need to put a business plan together. Okay. Again, there are tools available free of charge on the internet. You need to put your plans together, because it's all right having your plans up here. It's only when you start writing them down you envisage problems. When you envisage a problem and it's written black and white,
and it's on paper,
then you find a solution for it as well. So this is why you need to have that. And that, a lot of people say, oh, does it need to be 50 pages, the business plan? It doesn't need to be. It could be a 1A4. I've seen business plans which are just 1A4 side. Because that's all they need, right? But it gives them a target of where they want to be. And it's something they'll go back to, because you'll put on that business plan, where do I want to be in 12 months' time? Because once you start a business, you get so much absorbed into day-to-day stuff, you forget my ultimate goal was this. And that business plan, when you come back to
losing that first page you ever drafted.
No, you'll keep it. You'll be there. But honestly, it needs to be on paper. You need to have a business plan. So if you put those things together,
You're at least taking the first good steps.
You're on a good step, honestly.
Mashallah.
The other thing is that, look, businesses go up and down.
Yes.
Right? Okay? And there will be some businesses which you will lose on. The important thing is that you learn your lesson. And people who have, if you look at successful business people, they will have made lots of mistakes. They have learned from those mistakes.
They're the ones that have made the most mistakes to get to where they are.
Absolutely. They have learned from them. They haven't let that mistake
pull
them down. They've learned from that. They said, okay, that's something that we're not going to repeat.
Okay.
This is where I feel also mentorship comes in, because if someone's already got a business, they don't need to go into the same hoops and mistakes that you made. You can help them jumpstart that. Look, this is not going to work. This is what needs to be happening. And this is where it comes back to helping them in that way.
Sorry.
Interestingly enough, now, somewhere along the line, you may need some finance of the business. Okay, especially if you later on when you're expanding, right? You might need to find, where are you going to find that finance from? There's two options that you really have which are Islamically. There's three. Either you have your own savings or you get your family and friends, which I would say don't go down that route because it opens more cans of worms than it's worth.
Okay.
Because there'll be times, they'll give you money and then they'll want it back, and
you don't want to ruin that relationship with them.
I would say, look, try and avoid family and friends.
Okay.
So where do you go to for investment and to start to expand your business, or even starting a business? There's something called crowdfunding now. Crowdfunding. Okay. So crowdfunding is really a basic of you are investing or you're pitching to everyone out there and they're giving you a small amount in return.
Okay.
Now, for a new business, say for example, you're doing a bakery. I'm just making this up, example of a bakery. You could say, I'm going to set a bakery up and this is going to cost me £20,000. I need to raise £20,000. For everyone who gives me £10, I will give them a donut once a month free of charge. Okay, right?
Fair enough.
Yeah, it's that sort of price thing that happens.
Okay.
It's hugely successful.
Wow.
It's hugely successful. You'll be surprised at the amount of millions involved which are used in crowdfunding. And that's what they're giving back.
Okay.
Right? They're giving back just little gifts, etc.
And they're happy to fund.
And they fund it because it's like you'll say to me, I want a business. And you say, okay, how much is it? £10? I'll give you £10. They'll come to me, I'll give you £10. He'll give you £10. He'll give you £10. All of a sudden, he's got £40. It's costing four donuts. Right? Okay. And the donuts are in the future, right? So that's what happens. Is crowdfunding small amounts from a large crowd. And this is becoming more and more popular because it's a lot of supporting a lot of local businesses. This function has been, you'll be surprised that it goes into a larger amount. Now, say if someone wants a significant amount and they want to have a larger business, and they can say, look, I need a larger amount. It needs to be some serious funding involved here. It's got to be a bit more. Same concept. There are some companies who will say, okay, we will pitch this for you and we'll raise the funds for you. But you tell them that, look, my business, I anticipate will make X amount of profits. I will share this amount of profit with those people. A good Muslim platform for this is based here in the UK. It's called Qardus.com.
Okay.
Yeah, Qardus.com, Qardus.com.
Okay.
Right, and that's what they do. They look at the business. They look at this. They say, you want to have finance? That's fine.
They'll finance.
They pitch it to people.
Okay.
Yeah. So they put it on their platform. It allows people like myself to come in and invest. Oh, I like that. I'll put £1,000 to that, and I will get 10-12% back at the end of the year or whenever the project is going to finish. It has a time period as well. That sort of thing is happening. But platforms for crowdfunding, Indiegogo is a popular one. If you have a look at it, you'll be surprised at the amount of millions of some projects which businesses which are going to start have raised. Right? It really opens your mind.
Online really has changed the game, hasn't it?
It has changed.
You have access to people all over the globe that are willing to finance. As long as you pitch it well, here it is. Money's coming in.
Absolutely. Finance. It is. And it's becoming a lot more.
So I'm going to have to cut you short, honestly.
No
I
problem.
think it's been beyond an hour. We normally stop at an hour. I didn't want to stop you in your that advice you were giving in the basic setup. Inshallah, I'll be calling yourself back on, and that friend of yours from Leicester. It'll be interesting to actually speak to him directly and the avenues he's looked down.
Absolutely. We'll try and get him, inshallah, definitely.
Inshallah.
Interesting enough, one last thing is that when you talk about Islamic finance, an interesting book is coming out about how governments should run Islamic finance.
Okay.
And this is Sheikh Isra's next book.
Okay.
He's actually written his book. It's on down for publications, as it's called for publication. It'll be out released very soon. But he's actually written a book about how governments should use Islamic finance as a means to have ethical financing.
Sahih, mashallah, mashallah. Inshallah, the podcast will be continuing throughout Ramadan, and the after Ramadan, inshallah, we'll be looking to do a bi-weekly podcast, and
Inshallah.
it will give us more time really to grab people from different areas to come down and sit down with us. At the moment, the difficulty is we're recording late night. Not everybody can make it here. Then you've got Sahari in the morning. You've got a lot going on. You come back from Tarawih tired. I'm completely gone right now. I don't know how I'm even sat here after leading 16 rakat. But we're here. Allah Ta'ala accept. And Saeed bhai, thank you very much once again for being here.
No,
I hope inshallah people have benefited.
Inshallah, absolutely. It's been a pleasure to be here and share this time with you guys. I hope people benefit.
You also baraka in your time and in your efforts. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.